Welcome back. Police in Lusaka are investigating a case where 5 schoolboys are alleged to have been sodomized by 3 fellow older male pupils. It is believed that an elderly Indian man who was residing in the school premises was sodomizing some older boys who learned the act and then started doing it to the younger pupils.
Now, Zambia Police Service spokesperson Ray Hamunga says Kasim Tembo, a religious teacher at Islamic Education Trust of Zambia School, reported the matter to Charleston Police Station today on behalf of the 5 male pupils. Mr. Hamunga says the boys allegedly they have been sexually abused between February 2020 and September 2022 at the Islamic Education Trust of Zambia School in Lusaka. Joining us this morning to have this conversation is partner Siabutuba, Executive Director, Youth Development Organization. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me on your program.
All right. We'd like you to please give us a full picture of what really went on in the school.
Okay, it's difficult for now to completely tell what exactly was happening in the school, but we are still anticipating that the police investigations are going to give us more information as they are being carried out at the moment. But I think it suffices to say that the reports of sodomizing those pupils in that school have also been confirmed by some parents around the school. But details have not yet been given. And considering the fact that this case could have taken place from 2020 until now, so we still need to get closer to the few more facts about when exactly this could have happened and how widespread this evil act was within the school. It's very likely that more than 5 pupils could have been involved in this evil act. Our laws in Zambia are very, very prohibitive. It is crime or criminal to sodomize or to be involved in sodomy activities. So we don't have the details yet, and we are hoping that before too late, the police will give us more details about the whole incident.
Well, I want to, talk about, the safety of kids in the society and all of that. But, is this something that has been heard about before? Is this, just a one-off case in that school? And, would you say that schools across that city or that community maybe, need to pay closer attention?
I think it's very important now that we have this revelation. It is important that, first of all, we understand and appreciate the safety of our schools. Schools are generally understood to be a house or area of safety for our children. But if we are getting these reports of sodomy in the schools, then we begin to worry about the safety of our learning environment for our children. But also, we need to investigate further and appreciate the fact that these similar incidents are not happening in other schools. We know that sodomy activities have mainly been reported in detention places like prisons and other places of detention. But even so, they are still a criminal, and the rate at which these reports are coming is not been very encouraging. And yet we know that people who've been sodomized have come out and reported this. But to try and get closer to the issue has been a bit of a challenge. But I think that as it is now, this gives us an opportunity for the police to kind of have a broader investigation and see whether this is not one of those incidences only, but maybe this could be widespread in different boarding schools especially. And it's also very sad that it is a foreigner in the form of an Indian man who is at the center of these activities. It means that our children are also prone to learning very bad cultures that could be imported from other either backgrounds or associated with race or associated with some culture that are not necessarily within our culture. So I think this investigation should be deep and wide, trying to bring out all the relevant issues around sodomy and the other evil acts.
Before I ask you my next question, I want to say, are you saying that this is something that has never happened in your country before? I mean, you're making reference to the fact that because there's an Indian man involved, would you say that this is something that has never happened before, and this is, first of its kind?
Like I said, sodomy has been reported in places of detention, like prisons, and being practiced by Zambians.
All right.
We have not had such incidences in schools, and like I said, so this gives us an appetite to really get to the bottom of the issue and see whether this is a cultural orientation that children are trying to get adapted to, and they want to learn these things, or this could also be happening elsewhere where Zambians are at the center of it, or both scenarios could be taking place either in detention places like prisons and schools and other learning environments where children are gathering.
All right, partner, when it comes to conversations about sexual abuse and sexual assault, which at the end of the day this case is, what we find is that in many countries there are civil organizations or societies or NGOs that come together to ensure that they educate more young people about this, as well as the older people, and hold the older people to account. Do you have such settings in your country, as well as the family? What is the family setting like? Is it open enough to allow young boys and girls, open up when they're unfortunately being sexually assaulted?
So there are a lot of stakeholders, civil society organizations, NGOs, government, and church that are getting involved in sensitizing the community and children against sexual abuses of children. But we are also sitting in a very cultural environment where some of the sexual abuses find their way into the cultural context within which people live. For example, a girl who is less than 16 years gets married, and the person who is marrying this girl who is 16 or 17 years old, our statutes say that this is a child and must not be married, because if they are married, it's basically sexual abuse. But then we have some kind of a dual judicial system. The customary law seems to allow such marriages, for example, to take place. But some of us still we use the statutory law and argue that these are basically sexual abuses that are taking place on our girls. So we need to clean up a number of things, including our laws, to ensure that the messages around protecting children's rights, especially around sexual abuse, should not be somehow compromised by the kind of judicial arrangements that we have, some of which are sitting on the cultural and traditional laws.
Well, finally, I also want to ask about, the story, of course, is talking about older students abusing younger students. So what adjustments do you feel need to be made in the school environment to protect younger students in situations like this? Does the government also need to create different laws around the educational system?
I think it is important that government, first of all, provides very clear child protection guidelines to all the schools that are keeping children some form of a boarding facility. In whatever learning environment children find themselves in, government should rise to the occasion and provide very, very strict safety measures for the children. But I think that schools also might sign up to the guarantee that once children are in their custody, they will not be subjected to such evil acts. The school is an environment where a child must learn all the good morals. And it is very sad that the schools now are providing an opportunity for learning things that are against the laws and against our culture way of life. So government should be able to guide the schools, and stakeholders must come together and ensure that we have a comprehensive discussion around the safety of our children in their learning environment across the country.
One thing that we've been talking about on the continent is how men are taught to keep silent and bottle up emotions. Men are taught to, in quote, man up, which is a phrase that has been used to sort of condition men to keeping their emotions in check. Would you say that cultures such as that are prevalent in your country, and that young boys, young men, are not opening up, to discuss what they're going through?
We have a bigger culture problem where boys are taught not to cry when they are beaten, for example, by a friend. Every time a boy is found in some situation that challenges their ability, and they are taught, no, be strong, you are a boy. And so you can imagine, even this particular incident, these boys have been observing other boys being sodomized. It is also very likely that the boys that have turned on abusing other boys were part of the abuse that took place, and they decided not to come out in the open and complain, but they went to a point where they began to adapt to this very evil act and begin to practice the same on the other boys. And it has taken almost 2 years before this issue has come to the fore. It means that there's a problem with the rate at which boys are encouraged to report any abuse. So it's a cultural issue, and it starts from family, where we are telling our boys not to cry. We are telling our boys, if your fellow boy beats you, beat them again, and don't come here crying. So I think even older men are not able, for example, to report to police, gender-based violence that they suffer from their spouses and other female relations. So we have to get out of this culture of a cocoon that stops men from coming out when they abuse. So let's start with the boys, because these are the boys that are going to make men tomorrow. And until we begin to help them understand and appreciate that once they are inflicted with pain, they must be able to report such to police and other relevant authorities for their protection.
Yeah, it's probably also a good time to mention the importance of family here, in protecting these kids and, getting them to, I think, Olive already also spoke about this, getting these kids to, be open enough to share when they might be sexually abused. The culture needs to change, government needs to also step in. But I want your views on, where you think this case would lead. The Indian who has been mentioned also, has he also been arrested, and what happens next?
So obviously this case would lead to the arrest of the Indian man. I'm not very sure, but this morning whether the Indian has been picked, but I'm sure that the police would do good investigations. One of the things that we expect them to do is to detain the Indian man and ensure that it doesn't compromise with the information that the police would be trying to gather to get to a reasonable conclusion of the matter. And if it is found out that, indeed the man was involved in such an act, I think we expect the Indian man to be taken to court and be prosecuted, but also the school should also be taken to task. One of the things we would expect is that school should be closed until they can clearly confirm that it is safe, to be in their environment. But at the end of the day, I think it is very, very important that we begin just have this conversation around safety of our children in our learning environment.
I mean, there are several layers to this conversation. Besides the Indian older man, there's also the conversation about children abusing children. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central, partner Siabutuba.
It's my pleasure to be part of your platform this morning.